Good afternoon, and welcome to another episode of The Angry Astronaut, another live stream. Please forgive me if I seem a little overwrought. My pop filter fell apart, oh, I don't know, about 2 minutes ago, and I had to throw it all back together and try to get everything ready for you guys. So, once again, just normal chaos right before the live stream. Everything that can go wrong will go wrong. But first of all, can you guys hear me? The question I always have to ask. And anybody obviously on the questions and answers on Patreon, please let me know. Great. Excellent. Garfunkel 20. I think you may be a new member. I don't recall seeing you before. Hi, Timothy. Hey, Johnny. Hey, Framrick. Good to see all of you. So, in any event, there's been a number of things going on in my life in terms of family matters, folks in the hospital, stuff like that. Stuff that I currently can't do anything about. So I'm just, trying to keep myself busy and decided to do this live stream anyway. And I had to pick the topic because I didn't have enough time or opportunity or even the presence of thought to put up a poll. So in any event, we're going to be doing a topic that's connected to the video that I just did about the SLS, and that is trying to fix NASA. Not to suggest that NASA is completely broken or anything, but in a lot of regards, they are because they are incredibly, limited in terms of their funds if you compare them to other departments of the government, and they can't afford to be dropping billions and billions of dollars on projects that never get done. And so as a result, I thought that it would be good for us to have a discussion that can a government agency ever be fixed? Can government procurement ever be made more efficient and more competitive to where we're more demanding of companies that, win bids and that sort of thing? To try to improve what NASA does because NASA has accomplished some amazing things. Between their rovers on Mars, obviously the man on the moon, and so many other things that they have accomplished, in their history, the Voyagers. I mean, I could go on and on. And their plans for the future are quite amazing as well. I'm doing something on the James Webb Space Telescope. You guys have been asking for this for a long time. So, in any event, I'm finally going to do an episode on that to commemorate 25,000 subscribers. Thank you very much for all that. And finally, we have a new piece of merch, and I may comment about this a couple of times because I'm doing this whole thing ad free, including the recorded parts. And one of the ways that I can pay for this sorts of thing is by doing it ad free is through merch and obviously through Patreon. But this is related to my Mars base alpha concept, the base on Phobos that I've had an idea for quite some time. Ryan OC, one of our supporters, Ryan O'Connor, a very fine artist, did this for us. And I have the link for this particular design in the description right now. And only because I ran out of time, I didn't get a chance to go to Ryan's Twitter account and link him too, but I'm going to link him. Just go on to Twitter, Ryan O'Connor, look him up, an artist, and you'll be able to find his stuff. So in any event, that I think takes care of all of our business. And yes, indeed, Framrick, Ryan is a top artist and a top bloke, no question about that. Okay, talk angry and carry a big wrench. Yes, Joe Hero. Privatize NASA. Interesting idea, Timothy. I mean, in some ways, the U.S. Post Office is semi-privatized. They actually have not operated on government taxes for quite some time. Instead, they kind of tax us directly, tax the American people directly by, through stamps and other charges and that sort of thing. I don't know how NASA would do that. But at the same time, maybe privatizing them might be a good idea. Of course, that would be a huge incentive to try to turn a profit. But of course, at the same time, then it also encourages them to only work on projects that do turn a profit. And so things that just have a pure scientific application with no potential, money making potential rather in it at any point in its future, might never get funded. Things like James Webb, for example, I mean, that's a I don't know how many billions. I forgot. I need to go back to my video that I'm making right now. But all the billions that have been invested in that thing, would that be something that would be funded by a privatized NASA? I'm not sure. Johnny Spacer just said it seems like the Air Force and the Space Force are taking Starship more seriously than NASA. They are looking at using Starship as a very quick cargo vessel. That is true. The Air Force, it does seem that way. And I hate to be blunt, and I may be wrong about this, but one of the reasons why they might be more interested in it is because the Air Force is accustomed to having new products crash and their pilots die, to be blunt. The B-1 bomber, I would say, would be the ultimate example of that. They called for 100 B-1 bombers to be built back in the 1980s, and did not fund a probe to Halley's Comet as a result. And one of them crashed with three deaths involved the year after. Now, did you hear anything about that aside from a casual mention in the newspaper? Well, at the time, I did, just because I was so angry about us not having a probe to Halley's Comet. But it's not something that anybody made a big deal about. Anytime the military has an accident with one of their new products, one of their new planes, one of their new pieces of equipment, and it results in death, sure, people get irritated about it, but at the same time, it doesn't have that huge cataclysmic, sort of thing associated with it the way it does with NASA. Different government branches are held to a different standard. I think that, and that's, once again, this isn't me saying that I don't like the military. I believe very strongly in a strong defense. The United States need never be caught unprepared for a war the way we were at Pearl Harbor, when we had such a small military at the time, and we paid heavily for that mistake before we finally bounced back. And if we didn't have the Atlantic and the Pacific protecting us, most probably the Axis would have been able to take us out, given how unprepared we are. And yeah, Johnny Spacer points out, look at how many Ospreys crashed during development. Yeah, I mean, it's a common thing. The military loses not only equipment, but also people during the development of their new equipment. And once again, we kind of take it in stride, the public does, as opposed to NASA. When we lose 7 astronauts, it's something that puts NASA behind for 2 years, and leads them to be absolutely obsessed with the idea of never losing another astronaut. Therefore, we have them delaying the Crew Dragon again because of questions with the Falcon 9's engines, with those Merlin engines, a problem that we know could quickly be rectified, and I'm pretty sure doesn't need a delay, but nevertheless, that's what they're doing, just because they're that, terrified of losing any more astronauts. If NASA is defunded, doesn't that stop funding for the commercial space providers helping tech get into orbit, or does privatization only help profitable efforts? As I said, well, if it depends on, if NASA gets defunded, that hurts everybody. Yeah. I'm a big fan of funding NASA as much as possible. And once again, to put things into perspective, if we just gave 100 billion of our 700 billion dollar military budget to NASA, we could launch 50 SLSs a year, no matter how wasteful those things are. I mean, it's just, and once again, I'm not just going to slam on the military. There are many departments of the United States that get way more funding than NASA does. And think of everything that NASA could accomplish if they actually got, fairly funded, if they were funded in a way that everybody else is. And by the way, my cousin works for the Department of Agriculture. She's an entomologist and actually the daughter of my uncle who worked for NASA, quite a brilliant entomologist. And, she's subject to the same kind of issues. Department of Agriculture doesn't get much either. So yeah, it's problematic. Okay, so let's see here. But yes, to answer your question, it does. It hurts. Defunding NASA hurts everybody. So I definitely don't say we defund it. But how do we make it better? Wormhole Alien says people forget the aeronautics in NASA's name. They've benefited aerospace enormously doing research that no one else will do. Excuse me. Yes, that is very true. There's so many benefits that NASA technology provides. It's beyond comprehension, really. It's just how much a benefit that NASA brings to the public. It's certainly worth the 25 to 28 billion dollars or so that we put into it compared to how much we spend on other things. The return on investment is tremendous. Timothy brings up crowdfunding. Well, the Planetary Society tried crowdfunding with their light sail project, and it worked. They did eventually get it crowdfunded, but we're talking about a pretty small amount of money compared to what NASA's overall needs are. So I mean, I like the idea of crowdfunding certain projects and that sort of thing. But I really doubt that the American public or the world at large would crowdfund NASA to the extent that they would need to be funded. I'm now once again, I'm not sure. Maybe I'm being cynical here. Framick says I'd buy shares in SpaceX, but not sure about NASA. Yeah, and I don't think SpaceX, by the way, is ever going to go public. I do not believe that Elon Musk is ever going to give up complete control. He has a very clear vision, and he doesn't want any board of directors or any bunch of people on his board to push him out or to try to dictate to him what to do. I do not believe that Elon is ever going to give up control of that company. I really think that he's going to want it to remain private and to have complete control over what they want to do. Because I mean, look at the Starship. I mean, that's a huge risk. And there are lots of people that might say that, "Oh, what are we doing? We can make tons of money with the Falcon 9. Why are we building the Starship?" He doesn't want to put up with that. Rocket Nerd, hello, new member from Nashville, Tennessee. Welcome and thank you so much for coming by. Longtime viewer from the mask days. Yes, when I used to wear a mask that I actually got in Britain. It had little Stonehenge markings on it. But thank you for being part of the conversation. And thank you for being super heavy pissed off because I am as well. How about the Department of Space? Make it cabinet level, says Johnny Spacer. That is a unique idea. Oh, and by the way, this Boeing coffee cup, getting really nervous with 25,000 subscribers, getting closer and closer to blowing this thing up. We already have 177 people watching, so please subscribe if you haven't already. Please like, and once again, I have some new merch to support this because it's ad free. And it was created by one of our supporters, and I have it linked in the description along with how you can be a Patreon member and participate in these discussions for as little as $3 a month or 75 cents per live stream. Okay, so let's see here. Perhaps the new model should be NASA works with JPL for research. Nonprofit, no one else would do it. Commercial covers launch services. That's a very interesting idea, Framrick. I never really thought of that either. And, that's one of the reasons why we have these discussions, is to come up with all of these new ideas. That's very intriguing. So yeah, I think that would be a fantastic idea. And yes, well, Garfunkel 20 is from the UK, and a new member, as I guessed, so that's fantastic. And I have lots of British people actually as supporters of mine. Angry Space Nut is one of those. Because of him, this channel has grown to the level that it has. But I can't forget my supporters in other places too. I have folks in the United States. I have folks in Australia. So in any event, thank you to all of them. Alien Zookeeper. NASA is basically a public utility like a power co-op. Yes, a very good comparison. It provides a public good, science, and basic research, which are usually available to the public. Launch services is just part of which it's doing poorly at this point. Eventually, things will shake out and the dinosaurs will die off. Well, that's an optimistic viewpoint, and let's hope that's what happens. Back in the time, we need to remember that as much as we criticize NASA for doing things the way that they do, for example, manufacturing all of this, the different rocket components in different, parts of the country with different companies and all that sort of thing. And, it's difficult. Well, they're not as good as SpaceX, obviously, because they do things that way. But we must remember that that's how the Saturn V was created. And the things they accomplished with that rocket were absolutely incredible. I just think that these companies that are doing all of this stuff have gotten so accustomed to taking advantage of government procurement and pork that they're just, taking advantage of the government money now, and rather than trying to do something for the good of the country. We've lost our vision, we've lost our idealism. These companies have, and that's why I say kick them to the curb. That's why in my last episode I say at the very least bring in an oversight company that has some power, and if they refuse to cooperate, then just like I say, kick them to the curb. We'll never do business with you again. It's about time for us to start playing hardball with these companies, because NASA just doesn't have the money to burn. The military has a lot of money to burn on failed projects, like the Sergeant York, which is probably one of the most infamous pieces of equipment that never worked from the military. We invested tons of money in that, and it was a piece of junk. And but the military had the money to light up over it, and NASA just doesn't have that kind of funding. We can't afford to be burning money the same way. Framik says NASA was a good model for the time when governments had to support space programs, acquire funding, deliver big projects like the Apollo Voyager probes. Do we need something more agile now? Well, we certainly do have things that are agile. I mean, obviously, SpaceX and Rocket Lab and companies like them, Sierra Nevada, all of these companies are agile. And as much as I think it bothers a lot of you to hear me say it, even ULA is trying to get more agile. If you compare the amount of time that it's taken them from going to the development to the deployment stage on the Vulcan, it's way faster than the SLS, for example. It's a really quick turnaround for them. They're trying to become more agile themselves. They'll never be able to do it, not like SpaceX, but still, they're making an effort. So clearly, being more agile and creating results more quickly is something that that a lot of people are focusing on. So, how do we get NASA to do this, or at least do business with companies that behave like this? Curb blam, says Joe Hero, and Boeing just got another 1/3 billion military satellite contract. Yes, they did. And I was so pissed about that. At some point, I'm probably going to mention, for those of you not familiar with that, Boeing got a contract for a satellite that's supposed to secure, by the way, satellite communications from people like the Russians and the People's Republic of China. And we have Boeing responsible for that. That's just utter brilliance. And I'm being sarcastic as hell, by the way, obviously. My God, what a stupid move. A company that made all of these software errors on the Starliner, and we're going to make them responsible for securing our military satellite network. Are you crazy? I seriously, that drives me nuts. But in any event, Framic says it is great to be a patron and get to ask questions. Well, thank you very much for interactivity. Thanks, Framrick, for the compliment. But yeah, as somebody who talks to all of you guys, this is fantastic as well. And thanks, Joe Hero, for adding your voice to that. It really is awesome, and it's super cheap to join. So please, by all means, if you can, be a part of this. If you can't, just like and subscribe. That's certainly enough to, as far as I'm concerned. We have 230 people watching now. Wow. Thank you so much for watching, guys. Okay, so anyway, Cully just said NASA is good for pure science. The commercial sector is growing to take on applied science. Very good point. And maybe that's where the focus needs to be. In which case, this doggone SLS nonsense, that we're mired in, that is a huge pain, and gobbles up so much of the pure science that NASA wants to do. I mean, the Europa Clipper mission, which I'm very excited about, has been put into jeopardy because of the SLS. And, we're talking about using a Falcon Heavy, but it's going to delay the arrival for several years because the Falcon Heavy doesn't have the thrust that the SLS has. It's just beyond annoying. Framick also says NASA develops the research, commercial exploit the research, including launch services. Yeah, I agree, Framrick. That's the best way for us to be doing this. But we are, of course, then going to need companies with vision. And we are going to need to fund NASA, obviously, because for some of these things, the launch services that are needed for some of these projects require that, we send a lot of cargo way out into the solar system, which, you need a rocket that isn't going to be very useful for other purposes, for that sort of thing. And so companies are not going to see the profit in making a rocket like that unless NASA can pay for it. So once again, you go back to where NASA is going to have to be well funded in order to pay for these launch services that are going to be provided. And then again, we get back to, we're going to have to make sure that we only go with launch providers that don't take advantage of us. So, it just kind of goes back and forth. It's a vicious cycle. Sorry, my throat gets dry fairly quickly. Okay, Johnny Spacer, NASA's Aerospace Safety Advisory Panel did a good job recently of kicking NASA and Boeing in their complacency regarding the SLS and the lack of full-on testing. Yes, it is there was extreme concern mentioned that, especially in terms of software, the SLS is not doing from beginning to end testing, although NASA then came back and said that they were going to be doing comprehensive testing of all of the software, but in multiple facilities, which is kind of how they have to do it, given that they're manufacturing these things, these components in multiple facilities. But once again, this worked for the Saturn V. This approach was effective for the Saturn V. And I think it is complacency. Like you said, it's complacency that's led us to a situation to where what used to work for the Saturn V doesn't work anymore, or at least doesn't seem to work very well. So yeah, companies want to apply technology for profit on goods and services we all want, says Joe Hero. Rocket Nerd says, do y'all think that Chris Ferguson really backed out of the first crewed Starliner flight for his daughter's wedding? Or is he thinking like me and simply doesn't trust Boeing's extreme lack of oversight and dangerous path they have chosen to take? Well, Rocket Nerd, I am very biased, obviously, because I hate Boeing so much. But I believe the latter. I think that Chris Ferguson definitely is worried about what's going to happen with the Starliner, and that it's not a safe vehicle, given all of the problems that it had during its initial test. I don't trust Boeing at all to deliver a safe product, not at all. And so, it's I wouldn't go up on it, not on its first manned flight. Absolutely not. I wouldn't go up on that doggone thing. Whereas I would go up on the Crew Dragon. So why not both? Says Cully. Yeah, maybe he did it for both reasons. Joe Hero says, yeah, the first thing I thought was that that back out smelled funny. He may be privy to more information or whatever you want to call that than those 80 direct NASA directed fixes addressed. Another thing I don't like about it, Joe Hero, is that some of the fixes that are being addressed are being kept from the public. They're all proprietary information. So as a result, nobody really gets to know what the fixes are, with some of them anyway, except NASA and Boeing. And Boeing has their allies in NASA. So can we really trust that this is going to happen the way it's supposed to happen? I mean, this is one of the big things that's wrong with NASA, is that they're thoroughly infiltrated by these big companies, and influenced by them and their lobbyists. And we've got to get this out of here. There's a conflict of interests. And by the way, I'd be interested to know, given that the Crew Dragon was just delayed because of those Merlin engine problems, would the Starliner be held to the same account if we had had similar problems with its launch vehicle? I kind of doubt it, to be honest. So in any event, yeah, it's kind of it's irritating, and it's something that needs to be fixed. I have to admit, I am curious as to how the ESA does all of this. If they do things any differently when it comes to procurement. If Ariane is just as exploitive and just as awful as Boeing is, at least they're trying to go for reusability now. At least they're making an effort towards that. Yes, I keep putting my nose in this mug for a drink. Yes, I'm trying to get you guys agitated so you subscribe, and so we can get to 40,000, and I'll never take another drink out of this thing. Going to be difficult from NASA to steer away from big spends like the SLS, says Framrick, while pork barrel politics rule. Anyway, of shifting pork barrel from SLS to other productive stuff like the moon-based components, long-distance space probes. Yeah, absolutely. I apologize, guys. I got a real dry throat this morning. Advertising for Coke again. Okay. So yeah, we just pork barrel in general is messed up. It's just something that infiltrates every government agency. But the problem is that NASA's funds, again, as I said, are so limited that they can't afford this way of doing things. They just don't have the cash, and Congress is not giving them the money they need to finish Artemis. They keep denying these funds at the moment. At least the House is. And, it's going to be between the House and the Senate now to see how it all shakes out. But nevertheless, I think NASA should get this money regardless, because, I mean, given the amount of money that other government programs get, an extra $3 billion to get man to the moon, if that's what they need, at least currently, until we can get away from the SLS, I think that it should get approved. Otherwise, I don't think we're getting back to the moon ever. At least not with them. It'll have to be SpaceX that does it. All of our eggs in one basket. I've never been a big fan of that. Rocket Nerd says, I think 10 pounds of some tannerite would be a better end to the mug than some fireworks. 10 pounds. Wow. Johnny Spacer says, when Starship achieves orbit before SLS, heads will finally roll. Yes, if they manage to pull that off, yeah, heads definitely will roll. There's no question about that. There's Starship's got to jump through a lot of hoops in order to get there. They've got to get the super heavy, working. I mean, right now we're still doing, we only just completed, fuel pressure tests on the SN8, and we haven't done the 15-kilometer hop yet. And we haven't even, we've kind of gotten started with the super heavy. We're going to have to go through that whole procedure with that vehicle as well, and it's going to have a ton of engines. The only other vehicle that I know of that had that many engines was the Soviet SN1, and that's a terrible comparison to make. And obviously, SpaceX isn't going to do something like that, but still, it's tough to make a rocket with that many engines firing work. So in any event, this is going to be an uphill battle. I think they can do it in 2020, but they're going to have a heck of a task in front of them. Whereas in theory, Boeing shouldn't have nearly as much of a task in front of them, given how much of things are already done, how many things have already been delivered, But yeah, if the Starship achieves orbit before the SLS, then absolutely heads will roll. I can't wait, by the way. Just like you said, Rocket Nerd, I'm very excited about it myself. Frankly, I'm going to be going to watch whatever ends up happening. Not the 15-kilometer hop. I'm not going to be able to manage that in the time that I have left. But nevertheless, I certainly am going to watch the whole thing take off. Come on, twice the power of the Saturn V. That's going to be something else to watch. It's going to be scary as much as anything else. Given the explosive power that the Soviet rocket had when it went up on the pad. Let's hope that everything works out with that particular launch. But nevertheless, I can't wait to see that. Or if the SLS goes up, I'm going to watch that too. I mean, that's going to be something else to see if they actually pull that off. I mean, why wouldn't I want to watch a gigantic rocket take off? I'll definitely see it if it happens. Got my doubts that it'll ever take off, but who knows? These things can happen. Okay, so Joe Hero looking pretty ugly regarding fare selection for the Artemis moon lander. Seems NASA loved Blue Origin's idea right from the get-go. Closest to their original wasteful throwaway vision. Yeah, Joe Hero, you may be right. However, one thing we need to remember is that Dynetics is heavily involved in the SLS. They've done a lot of stuff in regards for it. So they're in Huntsville. So, and by the way, I'm going to Huntsville tomorrow, just so you know. And I'm going to be checking out some of these things firsthand. I called them. They have these new landers on display. So I'm going to be checking all of this out in person, and bringing back my report on what I think. So we'll see how much of it I get to see, whether or not I get to go inside. But according to what they told me, you can just go and have a look at these things. So I don't live far from Huntsville, so I'm going. But in any event, I really hope you're wrong, Joe Hero. But yeah, it could very well go that way. It'd be an absolutely idiotic idea, but it might very well go that way. And yeah, Framrick agrees for good reason. Like the original big contractor, wasteful lunar approach, SLS will be a beautiful rocket taking off. But think of those lovely shuttle RS-25 engines dropping into the ocean. At least at the shuttle, they landed again. Yeah, and that's why I created the video that I did with ideas on how to save the RS-25s. I think it can be done. I think if it can be done by ULA, I think that we can save those engines. I don't think we will, but we should. They are ridiculously expensive. We can save $500 million if we can save those engines. per launch. So I think it would be worth it if we could. Rocket Nerd says China's about to launch another satellite on a Long March 3B or E from the inland launch site. Heads up, villagers. Yep, they don't seem to care about anybody getting hurt when their rockets go up. So sad they continue to use that launch site when they have a nice new launch site on Hainan Island. Yes, they do. However, that island can also be observed by spy ships and stuff like that, and they care a whole lot more about keeping things secret rather than the lives of their civilians, obviously. Because every time, as my uncle told me many times, every time we launched a rocket back during the Cold War, there was a Soviet ship right off the coast of Cape Canaveral watching it in every detail with everything about it. So I'm sure that's why they're only going to launch the stuff they don't care about from Hainan Island. Okay, so Framrick says, what's the best model for 21st century orbital and near solar system stuff? Solar power satellites, factories in space, space hotels, orbital refueling depots. Probably not through NASA, but how to incentivize others. Maybe a model like the FCC offering a rural connectivity package to encourage low latency broadband, something similar to space-based power. Well, yeah, I mean, NASA kind of does some of those sorts of things already. They have contests that they do to develop new habitation designs for Mars and things like that. Why not make it more competitive than it already is, and then make it dependent on them actually delivering on what they promised? I mean, that's how contracts usually work. So why does this have to be different? Once again, it's government. It's just because the government will just blow money like this because it's not their money. But Jim Bridenstine should realize just how much trouble NASA is in and how much trouble Artemis is in because of the wastefulness of the SLS primarily. And if Artemis gets canceled under his watch, he will go down in infamy. So yeah, it's disgusting. Okay, Rocket Nerd. If you haven't been to see the Saturn V, it's a must see for sure. They have an incredible timeline there for the whole story of the to the end. Yes, I have actually. I was just at, I was just at Cape Canaveral. I released a video on the subject, and actually an exclusive video for Discord members. So in any event, that's only available here. Go back into the announcements, you'll find it. But there's an exclusive video about my visit to Cape Canaveral that is only available for Discord members. And I also put the link on Patreon, just so you know. Okay, let's see here. The first thing I would do, says Going Ballistic, is get rid of the worm logo for good. Only associated with all of NASA's bad luck and when they lost direction. That's a good point. Never thought of that, but very, very good point. Wow, we have nearly 300 people watching. Okay, once again, guys, it's in the description as if you want to participate in these things. It's easy, and we have new merch, a patch for Mars Station Alpha that has just been released, created by one of our own members, Ryan O'Connor, who has done a patch for a Scottish rocket company called Skyrora, and he did a patch for me. So go into the description, have a look. Since I'm doing this video with no ads, this is how I support it, through Patreon and through merch and stuff like that. So have a look at my first link in the description, and you'll see it. I think it's pretty cool what he did. Okay. So where are we? Okay, I think Framrick. Oh no, going. No, we're up to Framrick. How can NASA be separate from congressional funding efforts, though? Jim Bridenstine, like him lots. Yeah, I've learned to like him actually too. I used to hate him, but I'm fond of him now. Has to play the political game to get funding. Yes, he absolutely does. And yeah, this has always been the game in Congress, hasn't it? Every time. John McCain was the senator who made the strongest effort to try to do something about lobbying in Congress. and his efforts were always stopped because these politicians really like all the money they get from these lobbyists, and it really does create a serious problem. All I can say is, somehow the influence of Boeing lobbyists, it just needs to be, and lobbyists like them, that really needs to be revealed more. It needs to be put out in the public eye more, and it needs to be a greater demand to stop this nonsense. Oh, thank you, Timothy. Thank you so much for ordering the patch. I really appreciate that. So Rocket Nerd says that it's so sad that NASA only gets 25 billion in funding, and we're talking about $2 trillion in stimulus. Yes, that is true. It is ridiculous because honestly, those $2 trillion, as much as I would like to get 1,200 bucks, that's not going to save me, not for a minute. So true, $2 trillion in stimulus is there's only so much that's going to do for the American public. I'm not saying there shouldn't be any stimulus at all, especially for those who are impoverished, unemployed, really hurting because of COVID. That's fine, but that sort of thing. Oh, Framrick says, does the Senator Shelby affect prejudice funding for important space efforts? Only direct funding when it helps your district, not the overall direction. Hell yeah, absolutely. Excuse me. Yes, Senator Shelby is a bastard. I can't put it any other way. He's the worst example of a politician who uses his influence to get benefits for his district and doesn't care what it does to the organization in general. People like him and their influence that need to be curbed. We need to do something about this. And now that I've got 300 and something people watching, I'm going to make an appeal. We need, those of us who live in the United States, we need to call our congressmen or write them letters, our senators, everybody involved, and tell them to stop this, that NASA can't afford this nonsense. At the same time, though, that we need to fund NASA, but we also need to make sure that they're spending their money wisely. This needs to stop because space exploration, and Artemis especially, is entirely too important for us to lose it over this kind of corruption. So once again, this is a call to action. Let's do something about this. I already have. But please, anybody else who can, even people who don't live in the United States, write the White House, write anybody. Let's take some action. Gunkeltron says, I feel like Bridenstine's IQ went up about 10 points when he became a NASA admin. Yeah, it does appear that way, doesn't it? He definitely has come up with some better ideas since then. Term limits on representatives and senators will dampen lobbying. Yep. The term limit thing, but again, that's never gone through. These people are never going to limit their own terms. So that's kind of an issue as well. And then, by the way, that's on both sides of the aisle. Neither Republicans or Democrats, especially the career politicians, want to go. Neither Pelosi nor McConnell want to be gone because of term limits. So yeah, big thing. Yeah, Framrick says he just coughed up his coffee during the Senator Shelby comment. Well, thank you, Framrick. I appreciate that. Okay, maybe if Congress and the U.S. government set proper direction for the stimulus, get us space factories, get us solar power, get us preeminent in low Earth orbit. Yeah, let's get some action on the part of the U.S. government. I mean, some things have been done as a result of Vice President Pence to actually light a fire under NASA and get us moving, towards a really clear goal. Other people talk about this as being an arbitrary date, but I say, let's get this done as fast as we possibly can. We've been waiting too long as it is. The SLS should have flown in 2017. It's ridiculous. So yeah, I just, and once again, and does that mean I'm a Republican? No, I'm not. But at the same time, A lot of good things have happened as a result of that initiative and giving NASA a shove in a directive. So, that's definitely been a good thing. We need that fire of the 60s again, says Rocket Nerd. Yeah, we do. And honestly, if the United States doesn't do it, somebody else is going to, and that somebody else is China. They're being very aggressive. They're making it really clear that they're going to do something. And I don't think they're really making a secret of it. They want to dominate low Earth orbit and beyond. And if we don't do something about it ourselves, we're going to find ourselves in deep trouble. Not just the United States, but throughout. Anybody who might be opposed to the PRC's ambitions. And once again, this is not to say that the Chinese are definitely going to do this. They may not. They may be looking at at peaceful uses of space. Let's hope so. But I don't know. Given their behavior in every other degree, it's kind of hard to believe that sometimes. Investment in space tech always pays dividends. It brings investment rewards back. Yes, it does, and that is talked about all the time. There are so many benefits that investment in space tech brings, and it's ridiculous that we don't do anything about it. Things don't get done unless there's a strict deadline, says Johnny Spacer. I agree. I agree. No matter who wins this next election, we need to keep 2024 or at most 2025. I mean, we need to do something. And I think it should be 2024, frankly, because Biden should want this to happen at the end of his term as much as Trump should. As his first term in office, why wouldn't Biden want to be the guy in office when we put the first woman on the moon? It'd be silly for him not to want that. So, once again, make your voice be heard, call and write your senators, write the White House, whatever, let them know how you feel. Yeah, China should be the fire, says Rocket Nerd. Yeah, and they are. And if we haven't figured that out yet, then we're pretty stupid. When it comes to the US especially, and the ESA and just about everybody else. China's ambitions in space are extremely aggressive and may very well not be peaceful. So, yeah, this time we should be going to space, but not because of some prestige thing to put a flag on the moon before the Soviets do. There's a lot more at stake this time. Framrick says, I reckon non NASA investment in space based solar power would be an excellent way of decarbonizing and getting green jobs into the economy. I could not agree more, Framrick. You get way more power out of solar panels in space than you do on Earth. And then you transmit the energy via microwave or via high powered laser back to Earth. It's certainly something that can be done, and the dividends that it could pay would be tremendous. And there are a whole lot of lobbies, like the coal lobby, especially, and others, that would want to see that stop. But still, yeah, there's plenty of dividends you could get out of that. If once again, if you had the incentive to do it, or if companies have the ambition. And once again, Elon has the ambition, but he can't do everything. We can't depend just on him. Okay. Why not two first women instead of the first woman and the next man on the moon? Well, who knows? There certainly are female astronauts that are qualified. There are female astronauts with a hell of a lot of hours in space at this point. But yeah, I think that it's important. I know that mostly guys watch my channel, but I don't know. What can I say? I'm egalitarian. No women have gone to the moon, and that needs to change. There needs to be a woman on the moon. I think that's important. This has to be an initiative that crosses the genders, and the symbol of that is huge. And by the way, there's some violinist, somebody who can bring that to mind. She does she has this video about the first woman going to the moon and that sort of thing. Somebody can talk about that. I found that to be really inspiring when I watched that. I thought that was super cool. And I think that it also provides the kind of incentive and excitement for people like my daughter to see a woman set foot on the moon. I think that that is important. Get women interested in this project. And a very small percentage of women watch my channel. That saddens me in a lot of ways. I think it's only like 2 or 3% or something like that. But nevertheless, we should be, that is important. But I'll get off my soapbox on that. Should there be tax-based incentives for space tech, or just let the market take its course? I am a big believer in tax-based incentives. A big believer. When we had tax-based incentives for solar power, for example, and things like that, a lot happened. And by the way, I worked for a charity that put a 20 kilowatt solar unit on the roof, and we housed 100 and boy, I think it's 175 now people recovering from drug and alcohol addiction, low income people who can't afford to go anyplace else, and was able to pay for a lot of the power as a result of this tax-based incentive to put solar on the roof. I wrote the grant for it, and we got it. And then I got solar panels for the women's facility that we completed as well. So yeah, I'm a believer in that, definitely. Another space nut. Hi, hello. I'm not around today. Apparently, he's painting. Happy stream day to you as well. Thank you for dropping by. Rocket Nerd says, if you haven't watched For All Mankind series on Apple TV, then do so. It's a great alternative view of the Apollo program that takes the perspective of what if the Russians made it to the moon first. And given the recent circumstances with Artemis on what if China gets to the moon first. Thank you, Rocket Nerd. I actually didn't know that. So yeah, I'm going to check that out without any doubt whatsoever. Because Alexei Leonov strongly believes that the Russians should have won that race. If their developer, whose name I'm forgetting now because my brain doesn't work, if he had not died, he's confident that they would have made it first. They'd gone through a lot of the procedures necessary to make that happen. And I think if things had gone a bit differently, Alexei Leonov would have been the first man on the moon. So in any event, and Johnny Spacer recommends For All Mankind as well. So yeah, let's check that out. By all means. Wow, 324 people watching. Thank you so much for tuning in, guys. Really appreciate it. One more appeal: like, subscribe, Patreon, and I've got a new patch as well. So in any event, that's all in the description. I'll just say that, but check all of that out in the description if you want to support this, because this will go without ads, including the recorded version. No ads in this live stream. Okay. So lots of alternative histories on what if XX did it first. Most are very sobering. We should never take our eye off the ball with advancing into space. Yeah, there are many horrifying things that would have happened had things gone differently in a variety of different ways. To the end of the world with nuclear war, like we talked about last week. Lots of different things. So yeah, I'm definitely going to watch that series. I want to check it out, no question. All right, let's keep her going. We still definitely have some time. I'm gonna wet the whistle again. Okay, we've got people typing. So again, while people are typing, thank you for tuning in. Really appreciate it. We're at 25,000 subscribers. I want to blow up this cup. The more people who subscribe, the closer we get to the point to where we blast this Boeing cup into non-existence. So I'd very much like to do that, but we've just been discussing lots of different ways of encouraging or rather improving NASA, why NASA is so important, the benefits that it brings to us. There's a lot of things that we've already talked about in a very short amount of time, and I've said a number of times how you can support this sorts of conversation to continue
all in the description. And I just decided to say all that again simply because we have people typing, and so I had a moment to say it. We have lots of people typing right now, so I'm waiting for that to come up. Okay, Framrick says, no, wait a minute. Okay. Not particularly political, but should we use government support, NASA, the Japanese Space Agency, et cetera, as well as commercial to keep exploring? My answer to that is yes, absolutely. I think the government, our taxpayer money needs to go to stuff like this. I pay a lot in taxes. So do most Americans. Not all Americans, apparently, but gee, I just made a dig there. But nevertheless, it's most of us do, and I want to see a return on my investment. Damn it. So in any event, yeah, we should continue to use public support for these sorts of projects. It's worth it. It's definitely worth it. When is the cutoff over point where NASA should hand over the reins? Commercial crew is brilliant. So when should they hand over moon launch services, near Earth orbit exploration, mining, etc.? Well, a lot has been handed over already, but still, the moon launch services, well, I think it should be handed over once, the Starship is demonstrated as being viable. And as much as I believe that it will be viable, so far it's not in orbit yet. And we need to demonstrate, obviously the SLS isn't in orbit either, but the space shuttle did make it into orbit, and it is many, many, many times. And so, it uses the same technology. So the SLS has a certain advantage there. We're using technology that we understand very well to put a rocket into orbit. But obviously it's gone very wrong in spite of that, which makes me mad as hell, and one of the reasons why I created this channel in the first place. But yeah, I think the moon launch should be handed over once the Starship is functional. Once it at least makes it into orbit and gets human certified. I think that's extremely important. Mining, heck, that's something that we should be providing incentives on right now. Will I be cheering when the first Starship successfully returns from orbit? Can we do an angry astronaut live stream? Wow. Yes, of course I'll be cheering when the first Starship successfully returns from orbit. How could I not cheer about something like that? I'd certainly want to see it work, regardless of what concerns I may have. I actually have every confidence, by the way, as many times as I talk about the suicide dive with the Earth's atmosphere. I actually think that we stand a really good chance of making that work here because of the density of Earth's atmosphere. I think that it's very doable here. I just have concerns about Mars. That's all. And as far as a live stream, I intend to definitely live stream that from the site where it takes off. So we'll see how that all works out. I'm sure I'm going to be one of a billion people there, and I'm going to have to be camping out in the fields of South Texas because I'm sure there isn't going to be a single room available anywhere. But in any event, yeah, unquestionably. Okay. Yes, Boca Chica hotels, as few as they are, will be full. Gunkeltron, back to the topic of how to fix NASA. Thank you. I think the answer is to continue to applying the commercial cargo, and crew model that's been so successful to as many of their programs as possible. All of us here are aware of the Lunar Lander program and awards. I wonder how if a larger commercial moon-based program would be viable and what that would look like. Well, actually, right now there is a contest out at the moment for what they call an inflatable lunar habitat that NASA has out currently. Now, that's not a base, of course. That's more temporary lodgings, but it's a start of a base. They have that out for commercial bid and designs right now. The initial stages, the design stages, but that they have money being offered for it. So in any event, yeah, it certainly looks like that's what they have in mind. Johnny Spacer's talking about a Boca Chica meetup. Well, that would be something else, wouldn't it? Yeah, if I get my way. when the Starship is heading into orbit. Yeah, I'll be there. There's no question about that. But I think so will an enormous horde of people are going to be there. So let's hope everything goes well, and that they keep these people well back. That's a little scary. Okay, Garfunkel 20 says one main advantage the SLS has over the Starship is the maximum payload that it can carry in a single flight. Even when Starship is able to refuel in orbit, this is going to increase its carbon footprint by X amount. What environmental measures are companies such as SpaceX and NASA are taking to reduce the emissions? Well, I do know that Rocket Lab is taking the most aggressive actions when it comes to that sort of thing. But yeah, if we're starting to launch the Starship 3 times a day, that could create an issue. And yes, you're right. The SLS can take a heavy payload all the way, in theory anyway, take a heavy payload all the way to the moon without refueling. It is an advantage, assuming it works. But yeah, that's something to keep in mind. It is less complicated, which is again why I'm so pissed off as to why it hasn't gone, because they should have launched that years ago. Given the fact that they're using so much familiar technology, there's not a whole lot of brand new stuff being implemented. It's just more modifying what we already have. Another example, of what's wrong with NASA today is the fact that we need to hold these people accountable for this. Rocket Nerd, I'm taking my boat to Boca when they go orbital. I'd love to see the 15-kilometer hop. Probably won't be able to make it. I'd love to see it as well, but I probably won't be able to make it to Boca that quickly. But still, I think that there's going to be a lot of other exciting things to see at Boca by that time. Be sure to obey the range rules. Yes, indeed, I will, Johnny Spacer. I have no desire of getting blown to bits or burned or have a piece of stainless steel rain down on my head or something along those lines. Bring your fly swatters, says Going Ballistic. Yeah, that's one thing. I'm assuming there probably are a lot of insects in that area of Texas. Framrick says, should NASA be encouraged to get out of human launch services completely and concentrate on probe science and facilitation? Yes, I think that is the direction that they should head in. The only reason I say what I say about the SLS is because we're already so heavily invested in the damn thing. We've already put $20 billion into the stupid rocket. I'd like to see some return on investment there. I'd like to see the thing fly rather than not. It's frustrating. It's very frustrating to see that happening. So yeah, I do agree. I think that should be the model. Rocket Nerd says, for sure, I always look at maps. I'm no wayward boat. Wormhole Alien says, once the gateway is in place, why not license it to commercial operations for resource exploration, then use the proceeds for research? That's a great idea, Wormhole Alien. I think that's a hell of an idea. Why not take what we're planning to do with the ISS and use it for the lunar gateway? I think that's a perfect idea. We should do that. Johnny Spacer, I believe NASA has already ordered 6 or so SLS for planned flights to the moon, so we may be stuck with it for a while. Yeah, I agree. That's one of the reasons, as I said, why I put out this most recent video, trying to find ways of making this doggone thing, reusable, simply because, or less expensive, simply because we may be stuck with it for a little while. Rocket Nerd says we are, and I'm just praying that Congress doesn't cancel it. I do agree. As much as I hated SLS a number of months ago, at this stage, if we cancel the SLS, it's going to cancel Artemis, and then all our eggs are going to be in the SpaceX basket. And that's not a good thing, because SpaceX will have to be responsible for habitation on the moon, for the lunar gateway, all this stuff. Are they really going to do all that? Hard to believe that SLS will cost more than the Boston Big Dig, but then again, Shelby was involved. Yeah. Yeah. Crazy, isn't it? Just an insane amount of expense. Uh, Joe Hero says, sending AA. And once again, thank you. Thank you very much for the sympathy. But at the same time, given everything that's happening with me right now, I just don't know if I'm going to be in a position to scurry off to Boca Chica on such short notice. I think that might what end up would happen would be that I would do a substandard job of documenting it. I'm still not that great at that, obviously, yet, given what I tried to do at Cape Canaveral. So, in any event, I would say that if you guys want to chip in, there are many ways in the description to do so, and it's going to be used for very positive things. Like I said before, I'm going to Huntsville. I'm going to be looking at these new landers, doing my own take on them. Very excited about that. So in any event, that's the sort of thing I'm planning to do at this very moment. And I will be going to see some launches next year, though. There's no question about that. When will the SLS get the plug pulled? Will it be post Starship landing or after the guaranteed 6 flights? Hard to say. Very hard to say. The Starship will need to demonstrate that orbital refueling is manageable. That we can, that we can make that happen. That's going to be a very important thing. Obviously, the Starship can't get to the moon without that. All of these things are going to have to be guaranteed, and then they're going to have to certify the Starship for human use as safe for human use without an abort system. All of those things are going to be sort of challenging and are probably going to delay the cancellation of the SLS and the complete adoption of the Starship until that time. Johnny Spacer says, here's to the SLS being the last of the expendable rockets. Here, here. I totally agree. I think that the SLS should be the last one that we do. Even folks like ULA are planning to make the Vulcan reusable and saving about 70% on each launch is what they claim by 2024. So that's the direction even they're going. Sorry, I keep sipping. My throat is not holding up very well. And we've got about another 20 minutes or so. We need Starlink terminals in the field first for all of our favorite space YouTubers. Yes, I don't think actually Starlink is going to be working down in Boca Chica for a little while. Given that, Going Ballistic says, given that the SLS has a limited lifetime no matter what, then Shelby will try his best to get the Dynetics contract. Yes, he will, because that's his district as well. For once, he may be on the side of good. That's a very good point, Going Ballistic. He's going to be pushing hard for Dynetics to win that contract. There's a lot of jobs that Dynetics brings to his district. So yeah, that's a very good point. Framrick says, do you think there's a chance that NASA becomes militarized, more threat from China or Russia, more need to develop rods from God, space rocks, military craft? I would say that there is a chance, yes. However, what I would advocate doing is a response to this sort of thing rather than doing it preemptively. That we only start to develop rods from God, and what that is tungsten rods fired from orbit that can deliver, power that explodes kind of like a nuclear weapon except with a whole lot more penetration involved. But in any event, I would say that it should be more of a response to any indication that the Chinese or the Russians are doing something like that rather than us preemptively doing it, because the Russians have a way of getting really paranoid when we start to develop a weapon system. They respond really fast to something like that. And I'm against an arms race in space, and I don't think we should do it preemptively. But do I think that it's possible? Yeah, I really do. The Orion, says Johnny Spacer, the Orion looks like a great spacecraft after all. It had a successful test flight like some 5 years ago. Yep. Yeah, they got the Orion pretty much taken care of a long time ago. It was ready for the SLS a hell of a long time ago. That's what Space Force is for, says Rocket Nerd. Yeah, Space Force serves that purpose. We'll see if Space Force survives a change of administrations. I'm not sure if Biden will want space defense to be put back into the hands of the Air Force or not. That's a big question. But in any event, we'll see how all that happens. Framrick says, yeah, I'm worried about NASA being integrated with the Space Force, lose civilian access to space. Well, it's not just that. It would also mean that NASA becomes a military organization just like the Chinese space agency. I'm not in favor of that at all. That's a serious concern. And by the way, was a big cause of what happened with Challenger. NASA was under so much pressure to deliver for the US military in terms of getting satellites up as fast as they were expected to, that they took a chance on those O-rings and resulted in the death of all those astronauts. And that's well documented. Um, that's something that a civilian space agency need not be worried about. So okay. Tom, hi Tom. A little late to the party. Yeah, well, we still got a little time left. I think NASA should cut their losses with SLS and figure out a more fair way of awarding contracts. Yeah, there's a strong argument for that. It means that that's $20 billion down the toilet, which I really hate. But at the same time, maybe that is what has to be done. I really have a hard way of saying it. I don't know. Thank you, Ricker. I appreciate that, by the way. Framrick, there seems to be a curious dynamic between NASA, the Space Force, and the United States Air Force with access to space, the X-37B, etc. Does the military not trust civilian space? Does shuttle cross range pressure still figure in space access? I don't know, Framrick. I really don't. I hope not. I hope that we're starting to separate these agencies a little bit, because I think that civilian space exploration it should be something entirely different than military applications. I think that they should be kept separate. Because the military is just as guilty, if not more so, of being wasteful when it comes to procurement, spending insane amounts of money on new weapon systems, new aircraft, all of that. They're just as bad, if not worse. So I don't think it's going to help NASA at all to be integrated with the military. Once again, not to slam on the military. I believe in a strong defense, and I strongly respect and appreciate the men and women who defend my country. I think that you guys are doing a great job, but at the same time, I think it does a disservice to people like you for the military to waste so much money on new weapon systems and not give enough money, say, to the VA, for example. That's just absurd. Okay, so NASA was created by President Eisenhower to keep the military out of the project, says Johnny Spacer. Thank you for that. Good point. And yeah, I think that it should stay that way. I like Ike. 343 people watching now. Wow. And we were running out of time even for well, we still got about 15 or so minutes left, but in any event, thank you again so much for watching. Do you think NASA has a worthwhile future? Should Jim Bridenstine stay on even through the next administration? Hell yeah. Hell yeah. I think he's done a good job. I think that he has a good head on his shoulders. And I think NASA can have a worthwhile future if it goes in the right direction. Jim Bridenstine has gotten, the private sector more and more involved in our exploration of space by the day. Originally the SLS was supposed to be deploying the lunar gateway, for example. Now it's not doing any of those things anymore. A Vulcan rocket from ULA is deploying resources to the moon early next year if everything goes according to plan. Once again, privatization. He's been big on that, and that needs to stay in place regardless of who's president. Let's hope it happens. Yeah, go Bridenstine. I totally agree. And Framrick says, I like Jim. He has steered the right course between politics and getting things done. I do agree. I do agree. Bridenstine says, Johnny Spacer, Bridenstine has been the most pro space NASA administrator ever. Yes. And not only pro space, but pro human exploration of space. That has been so critical. And yeah, he's been a huge part of it. So yeah, I mean, in some ways, having him in charge is one way to fix NASA, isn't it? So part of it's been done. But now, he needs to have more authority and needs to be able to play hardball more with these companies that take advantage of our space program and our government procurement program, which is frankly broken. Bear with me. Okay, we got more people typing. So 331 people watching now. Wow. Thank you guys. Thank you so much for participating. I'll say it one more time here. If you want to support things like this, this episode will be ad free. You can become a Patreon supporter to participate. You can invest in the merch, and I've got a new piece of merch in the description. Very cool. Check it out. So in any event, and it's not very expensive, by the way, either. James Webb was good, but I think Bridenstine takes his cake. Yeah, James Webb was very good. But yeah, I have become a pretty big Bridenstine fan, and I wasn't at first. But I've definitely changed my mind since I started this channel. Where is the next big goal NASA should shoot for? Mars, Venus, the asteroids, the moons of the gas giants? Well, according to NASA's current plans, their next target after the moon is Venus. I put a link on that into one of my more recent videos, the one I did on Ceres, by the way. The reason they're going to Venus next is because Venus is closer. It's easier to do an abort from Venus, and they want to do a flyby mission to learn how to do an interplanetary mission without being out there for 3 years. So that, and I agree, by the way, I think that's a good plan. Excuse me. And by the way, that plan was in place before all of the recent discoveries that were made as far as life on Venus was concerned. We had strong suspicions about life being on Venus, and anybody who's watched my videos knows that we had strong suspicions about there being life in the Venusian clouds prior to these recent discoveries. Can't wait for the 2050 Bridenstine Space Telescope. Yeah, who knows? Who knows? Yeah, series. Yes. That is on the list, just so you know. It's Venus Mars series. That is their current list of objectives. And I have links in a couple of my videos to show their plan. And they have some contests in place right now, by the way, to support that whole plan. So the more public attention is given to near-Earth object collisions, the closer to space colonization objectives and global harmonization of peacefulness in space and ambitions, in my view. Yeah, that's true. I mean, I agree, Ricker. The possibility of near-Earth objects colliding with the Earth and all the disasters that would occur as a result of that. Yeah, that's something that we should definitely keep an eye on. Next target being Ceres, says Johnny Spacer. That's an interesting idea. It's a great base to explore the asteroid belt. And of course, I've done a video on it. So I think that it is definitely a good target. And we have already been there with a probe. We went there and to Vesta, as a lot of you know, some time ago. Lots of prospecting probes, says Framrick, in the asteroid belt. Yeah, there's a lot of money in the asteroid belt, a lot of money, which again, nobody is currently trying to exploit. The first person who does is going, if they have the proper logistics to do it, is going to become crazy rich. Project Space Guard, maybe more attention to NASA and other organizations having Earth defense in the back pocket. Yeah, why not? At some point, something big is going to hit this planet. Why not have a multinational, multi-agency initiative to protect this planet? And not only that, one of the solutions, which would be involved using lasers to deflect asteroids, using their photons to deflect them at great distances, kind of like you use with light sails, can be used for light sails to explore the solar system, to perhaps even go interstellar. So it has a lot of uses besides just protecting the planet from asteroids. So, but I've talked about this a number of times, but I've always wondered what happens when we run out of helium. It's pretty critical for rockets. Yeah. Yeah. And there's a lot of it on the moon, and there's lots of it in other places. We really need to get out of the cradle and stop relying exclusively on the resources we have on this planet. Okay, Framrick says probes with NASA JPL support for the upper atmosphere of Jupiter and Saturn. Helium 3 mining from gas scooping the gas giants. Like and subscribe, everyone, says Framrick. Well, thank you so much for that. And thank you. I appreciate you complimenting the stream. Thank you so much. Going ballistic. And it's critical for birthday parties. Yeah, well, I guess as you've noticed, it's almost impossible to get helium for birthday parties anymore. I'm not even sure if my kids remember a birthday party where they had helium balloons. But in any event, okay, let's see. And by the way, I'm going to trademark "in any event," just so you know, since I use that expression all the time. Okay, let's see. We have more people typing. So, gosh, we have a lot of people tuned in right now. Thank you so much for being part of the audience, for checking this out. Those of you who are participating, those of you who support this, or just those of you who subscribe, watch, whatever. Um, Thank you so much. And once again, I'm keeping this ad free. Not only that, I'm also going back to all of my previous live streams, and I'm making all of those ad free too. I really think that these things should be ad free. And so, if you can find ways of supporting this channel, by all means do so, but you don't have to. I want to make these things ad free, encourage folks to watch them. Okay, so yeah, so yeah, you had my support before, but now you have my wallet, says Rocket Nerd. Well, geez, do I now? Well, I am, as I mentioned before, I am going to Huntsville tomorrow. I'll be driving to Huntsville to the Rocket Center, or to the NASA Center there, checking out the new Dynetics lander and the new Blue Origin lander, which are on display. I'll be showing you why Blue Origin sucks so much in person. We'll see what they think about that while I'm saying these sorts of things. But yeah, on a weekday at these places, they're ghost towns. So in any event, I think that it should be a really good visit. Framrick, my son works in physics and they have to capture helium for their experiments. Too precious to lose. Yes, and another reason for us to be exploring the solar system and taking advantage of the resources that we have at our disposal, and so absurd that we haven't done it yet. Ricker says, would be reassuring to see SpaceX now start equipping some of the Starship domes with a base ring of Draco engines for emergency separations and crew abort landings like the Dragon capsule went through to secure human flight certifications. That's a good idea, Ricker. And a lot of people have talked about that, what is called a modular Starship. And I actually have thought about doing a video on this, but actually I need to consult with the people who know more about this and actually have have better ideas than I do about it. before I release a video on it. Thank you, Framrick. I appreciate the compliment on the live stream. Yes, for the record, Rocket Nerd, they do have the landers. I spoke directly to them. They told me what building the landers are in, and yes, their mock-ups are available to the public. So I was told. They better not have been lying to me. And by the way, I'm going to be calling them to confirm all of this today. But yes, the landers are there and available for the public to see. So in any event, I certainly hope that's true because I'm going to be driving a long ways to pay them a visit. Should we, Framrick says, should we continue to support NASA during the near-term launches? I think so. They will change, but it takes time. Yeah, I think we should for the near term. I agree with you, but it takes time to make the necessary changes. And it's, the Starship isn't flying yet, and we need to keep that in mind. We haven't proven the Starship yet. Once it is proven, then that's a different story. Suggest a bat pole for the Blue Origin lander when we get there. Yeah, I'm making a guess. I'm making a prediction that when I go out there, they're going to let me walk right up into the Dynetics lander, but they're going to have the ladder off limits because of its danger. I'll bet you that they're going to have it blocked off to the public because it's dangerous. That's just my prediction, but I'll bet you that's going to be the case. Okay. Thank you, Joe Hero. A suggestion to those who looking to support, look through your inventory of subscriptions, see what you don't use. I was a closet singer on Spiel, and I found that I hardly don't ever use it. Well, thank you. He's just asking to shift your unused support to the Angry Astronaut. She's like, thank you so much, Joe Hero. That was incredible. That's incredibly nice of you. Thank you so much for your support and for saying that. That means a lot to me, and believe me, it's going to be put to really good use, as you will see when I go to Huntsville, and as you see, actually, I'm going to Britain next year, assuming that this COVID. Ooh, I just said COVID, except I'm not monetizing this thing, so who gives a damn, right? Assuming the COVID thing calms down, then I'll be able to go to Scotland and pay a visit to Skyrora, which I've been talking about, and having a look at their operations. And I'm very excited about that. So Framrick, I reckon Starship will have a modular top connect to a different nose cone per mission, a chopper for telescope satellites, crew modules, a modular Starship. Yes, we've talked a lot about this. And yeah, I'll probably be doing an episode about that very soon. A 2-hour drive for you, says Rocket Nerd. That's actually significantly less than me. It's about 4 hours for me, I believe, or it might be longer than that. I used to work for a company that was headquartered out of Huntsville. Ricker says, check out what's left of the Saturn V engine static test stands there in Huntsville. A fellow I spoke to who lived there during the time said that the flame diverter trench made for deflating sounds a few miles away. Yeah, I definitely will. I'll be checking out a lot of stuff. Everything I can put my camera in front of, no question. If you go near Blue Origin, they will escort you off the property, says Going Ballistic. Yeah, they probably will. They probably know me all too well now. So in any event, okay. So, and Rocket Nerd wants to emphasize that's exactly what he did. He diverted some of his unused support to me, and thank you for that. And a lot of you guys did. I appreciate that. It's really going to lead to this channel being immensely successful and me bringing much better content to you as time goes on. Yes, I'm very excited about Skyrora as well, Framrick. I've looked at their list of rockets. They're very much like Rocket Lab. It's very exciting what they might be able to do. Joe Hero says 24 hours to get to Huntsville for him. Well, geez, very interesting. You must be a very long ways away then. Ricker and Framrick, both typing, and you are going to be our last contributors, by the way. I'm going to have to go ahead and cut things off here. So go ahead and make your comments real quick. And once again, thank you guys so much for participating. And, it's been wonderful to talk about this. A lot of good suggestions about improving NASA, about making NASA more efficient, making it less subject to government, the corruption in government procurement, that sort of thing. Framrick says, are we now at the cusp of a new space age? I've not seen this in many decades. Very exciting. Yes, we are. There's no question about it. We absolutely are. There are so many things happening now that weren't even beginning to happen in the 90s and in the 80s. We are definitely at the cusp of a new space age, and I am super excited about that. And you are welcome, Framrick. You are quite welcome. Okay, so nearly ready to cut off, but I'm going to let just a couple more comments if you can get them in rather quickly, because I actually do have a video to complete today, believe it or not. Last excitement like this was the Columbia in 1981. Yeah, I remember that moment. That was incredibly exciting. I got to see the Challenger take off on its maiden flight, actually, and that was incredibly exciting. Rocket Nerd says, darn, so much fun to see like-minded people here. Can't wait for next week. Me neither. Just have to go watch some COVID football. Yes, indeed. Looking forward to, well, thank you very much. I appreciate all that. And all right. Well, in any event, really appreciate everybody's participation. You know how to support me. Check out the new merch that I have in the description, created by one of our own supporters. I've said this millions of times, but I have no idea if new folks may have tuned in. So in any event, you know how to support these sorts of things, and it will remain ad-free, including the recorded versions if you want to go back and check it out. So until we are ready to get NASA to do the right thing, to get NASA to be unlike other governmental agencies and really do what their mission objective is, and to open up space to exploration and for scientific innovation and discovery, I urge all of you to stay angry about space.